So thanks, everyone. I probably can see 10 people in the lights are so I'm assuming there is people in the crowd, so I will speak as if there are. So first of all, thanks for the opportunity. Thanks for coming and keeping me company as we go through a little bit of reflection on what going from premium to freemium has been for Glu. So as you know, Glu has been around for about 10 years, done a lot of work in premium, done a lot of work with some of the major brands in the gaming industry, some of the major publishers. At some point, it became very clear about a year and a half ago that that's not what growth was. Growth wasn't going to be, at least the growth that we cared about, was not going to be in premium and was not going to be, obviously, at that point, it was a done deal in feature phones. And so one of the things that we keep discussing and we keep getting asked all the time, why freemium? There is a lot of great applications that are doing incredibly well in the premium space, and I think that that's extremely valuable and extremely viable for them. At the same time, for a company that aspires to be a leader, aspires to be reaching gamers wherever gamers are, I think freemium is the way to go for the reasons that I put in my slide. I'm not going to read my slides, by the way. Those are more there for you. I will, with a light touch, try to go through the main themes of what the slide is about. So for me, the main point on that slide actually is what I call access. So freemium, because it lowers the barrier of entry so much, it really allows to touch every consumer in the world with a barrier of entry which is the lowest that it can possibly be. There is nothing cheaper than free, obviously. We joke about this all the time. And the reality, though, is that it's difficult to reach consumers even when an application is free. So it's deceptively simple. It's deceptively, I would say, intuitive. But there is a lot of hard work that has to go into this, and that is what I'd like to cover today. Really give you a sense of all the work that needs to go on all of the fronts of developing games for mobile, which is the main focus that we have. But I would say that if I look at that list, everything from persistent to service-oriented are all things that are obvious to everyone, and yet each one of them poses amazing challenges in terms of how an organization is shaped up, how we think about the space, how we build the games, how much design needs to get done up front versus how much design we do after the application is live. So none of what you will be seeing today is trivial. I just wanted to put some numbers up for context. So when we say what is the caliber and what is the size of the audience that we're looking at today, this is what the future holds in mobile alone. Remember, freemium obviously is not a staple of mobile. Freemium can apply to almost anything, and in fact it originated, as you know, in the online space, especially in Asia, but there is also a lot of web-related companies that have taken advantage of freemium. That's the size of what the marketplace is going to be for mobile. So the growth potential is explosive, and mobile and freemium allows you to reach each one of those consumers with a barrier of entry that, as I said, is probably the lowest that we've seen ever in any gaming platform. I wanted to give you a sense of some of the things that usually are not necessarily very transparent or very clear to anybody who's not been part of the free-to-play mobile landscape for the last several months of a few years in terms of where monetization takes place. So usually the normal thought is that you sell items in the game. Well, that is one of the potential avenues. But if you take a look at the numbers that you have on screen right now, the potential user base, what we call the rate of conversion from free to play, is only at any given point about 5%. In reality, it can go anything between 2, 3% and 7, 8% on the high end. But it's dramatically low. Now, I've said this before in many interviews. I'm on record saying that we as a company, and definitely myself as a game maker, I care, and we as Glu care about every single consumer, whether they convert or not. One of the fallacies of the business is that we care about the people who pay, who convert. The rest are freeloaders. That it couldn't be further from the truth. In reality, that's your marketing department. Virality, if you go back to 2 slides ago, which is point number 3 on this slide, is based on the fact that you have a very large cross-section of your consumers actually playing the game, even if at any given point they might not necessarily convert and pay. They might in the future. So you want to spend some time actually doing their life, making their life easy as much as anybody else, engaging them and giving them a lot of just a great gameplay. 2 other things, I'm not going to linger on this too much, but this information is public. You can find it everywhere. There's a lot of great partners out there that allow you to reach a lot of additional customers in different ways through your game, through ads. So incentivize what do we call the CPX, which is cost per, for example, engagement, or cost per interaction, or cost per download. Cost per download obviously has seen a lot of cramping in the last few months. We're not going to go there. This is not what this talk is about. But obviously there are challenges that we've seen in the industry to be able to capitalize and monetize on those too. But the way to take a look at this slide is what you can do as a company to actually make your model work in terms of monetization by having 100% of the people seeing your ads through banners, 5% of your audience, which is comparable to the microtransactions. So that's a pretty valid business model, or I should say element of the business model that can translate into actually cash and monetization through your game. I wanted to share also what our particular history has been at Glu in general in terms of taking a look at a cross-section of the last 18 months. This is what Glu looked like in terms of stock price when we decided at some point smartphone would have been our focus. So you can tell that scale is the stock price, the strike price. You can tell what the stock price was at that point. At some point, a new management team was brought into the company. The decision was made very early to move into freemium and social. We started development of our new original IP, started making a concerted effort towards moving away from licenses to maximize our ability to monetize, obviously. And you see how it stayed pretty much steady for quite a while. We launched the first titles. There is actually a little bit of a lag here. This is just the market starting to react to some of the attention to mobile. But the real growth comes into play here. This is what freemium can do for your company. Obviously, Glu is a public company. What we do is in front of the eyes of everybody. You have one element that you can look at to judge success every day, going on Yahoo or on Google and taking a look at the stock. But this is, and obviously, stock is what stock is, right? So we all know, obviously, that there is a lot of emotional elements that play into that. But at the end of the day, if you take a look at this curve, I don't know what your reaction is. My reaction every day when I look at this is, frankly, if we were still making premium games, we would probably be up here. Maybe. The potential is a lot higher than this, obviously. We just started our climb. I think the opportunity is all uphill, and it's all positive. And as a private company or as a game developer, you still have the ability to grow your growth the same way that we did. But here's the rub. Freemium is very different. Freemium requires you to think about a different market. It requires different tools. It requires the ability to have a different mindset. You need to build your organization in a different way. So it cannot be an afterthought. You cannot take a premium game and just think that in 2-3 months you will convert it or port it to freemium, and it will be just seamless, and it will be just successful. I wish that if that were true, because that would mean a lot fewer nights awake, working, and weekends and so on. That's not the case at all. There's a lot of work, as I said, that goes into it. And so let's start drawing some parallels in terms of the differences, the core differences between a model that we know very well in the industry. That's where I actually have spent probably 80% of my career. I've been in games for about 16 years. I've been in mobile for about 2, and I've been in freemium for about maybe 18 months. So I know this space extremely well. Here's the problem. The premium organization has one point of focus, which is the moment you launch. After that, the product is outside of your hands. There is very little you can do, unless it's obviously a multiplayer game, in which case I'm assuming you will maintain it. But this is what your focus should be, and your challenge is going to be as you move from premium to freemium, especially the cultural elements of this change. Remember, you can only make games that you can conceive. The process is going to be, and your mentality, your own way to look at the problem is going to be your main limitation. It's not going to be the market. If you flip back and forth between these two slides, you start seeing how this is all front-loaded. What we do in a freemium company is really try to go to market with what we call the minimum viable product. Something that we can launch, that is great gameplay, is a legitimate game that we stand by, and we know that we can distribute, and with a lot of pride and a lot of, I would say, attention to the quality that goes in the hands of our consumers. We don't just throw out games that are half finished. But definitely, we are not insulary. We don't think about the game, the job is done, and the game is complete the moment the game goes out the door. And one element that is extremely important is the cyclic nature of development, which means you got to go out and touch the same element over and over again, because you will find out that your assumptions about what people like are going to be extremely different than what the market teaches you. Service-oriented is the core of that point. And so how do you go from premium to freemium, assuming that that is your interest? And I assume that if you're here listening, probably there is at least a non-academic interest in this endeavor. Here's the thing. You need to understand that the product is the process. What do I mean by that? You live and breathe the same game month after month if you're successful, and the success of your process will be the key limiting factor of how good you will be and how good your game will be. Also, you have to think free. You have to start thinking free from the very beginning. There isn't a game that can be made from premium to freemium at the 11th hour. If you can, I will be very happy to listen from you how you did it, because I have something to learn from you. We haven't learned that lesson yet. We start from the very beginning. And the other point that is incredibly important is it's never done. The moment that your game is done is the moment that your game is dead. Fundamentally, you stop developing your game the moment that your game goes down the ranks of the App Store, of the Android marketplace. You don't want to be in that position. You want to be in a position in which you continue to touch your game. Some of the myths, right? Freemium is not free. At the end of the day, it's a gimmick. You ask people for money and you can play if you don't pay. It's not true. If you are willing to grind, if you are willing to put up with the experience that the game gives you for free, it's completely free. There is no cost. There is no cost of entry. There is no cost to continue to buy. Obviously, if you want to have the premium part of the freemium name as an experience, at that point, yes, you will probably level up faster. You will be able to enjoy items that are going to be a lot more interesting, and so on. It's only for farming is another one. We've made some of the games that are action games, like Contra Killer, Big Time Gangster, and Gun Bros, that are core games. They have a casual touch, but they're fundamentally action games. So some of the realities. You need to start thinking about games as a service. I say this internally all the time. We are in retail all the time. We are in a situation in which we need to take care of our consumers. We are Nordstrom, we are Macy's now. We need to really focus on the experience that they have. It's not sufficient to sell a product and walk away. You're going to have a relationship with your consumers. You piss them off. They're going to tell everybody else that you did. They're all connected to Facebook. They're all connected to Twitter. This is a connected audience at this point. And obviously, it's a rapid shifting market. Consumer intelligence is incredibly important. You have to live with the data and the analytics that you can build in your game, everything you can actually take advantage of. A few other things, we're running out of time, so I'll go a little fast on these few ones. Some of them are just drilling down in some of the items that are already touched on. The game economy is not an afterthought. I actually don't like the word monetization because it brings the emphasis on one point of the economy chain, on the value chain, which is the moment when you cash the money. There is a need, obviously, to be able to do that. And now we have a CD marketing with Dave at 4 o'clock. So the only thing that I'm going to mention is what I mean by measure twice and cut once. You have to think about what you do very, very, very well. So we do think that freemium works best with social because it obviously exploits the virality of the application. The design process, as I said, is critical because of that iterative nature. That's what your funnel is going to look like. You're going to go through many games. Your data is going to tell you what's successful. Some of them will take a second pass. Over time, you really are going to focus on your critical successes and the ones that people are gravitating towards. How do you scale? If you're a large company like Glu, one of the problems you have is if you're successful, and we've been successful in the last few months, probably more than we predicted, frankly, your teams will stay with the game that they've launched. You can hire fast enough. You can grow organically fast enough. So what do? You have to look at partnerships. And so there is a double interest in this. For a publisher, is to connect with consumers, but it's also connecting with game makers in a different way. That can be extremely advantageous for both parties, for developers and at the same time for ourselves. Here, what we've done in the last few months, I have a few points that I can talk about. This speaks about the point about G-Partners, which is our external development program. Why do this? For scale, growth, specific talent, specific skills that we don't have in-house. We've never made an MMO. We wouldn't know how to do it. Why not participate with somebody else who's very talented? Product specialization, as I said, we might want to make games. Sports is not one of the areas in which we've done a lot of work in the past. That is an area in which there is a need for pre-existing talent, specific marketplace knowledge. China, we have actually presence in China, but there is other countries in which we don't have a presence, and so partnering with somebody else might be very advantageous for us. A typical example, we joined forces with a very successful small team, a new team in Canada. These are the guys behind Zombie Cafe, Little Pirates and Smurfs Village, very successful, very, very smart guys. We feel very fortunate working with Blamo. It's been a success story so far. And the parting thought that I would like to leave you with is that this is a new game. It's a new regime. It takes new thinking. It's an entirely new way to develop games. We are very excited. Hopefully you'll try and you'll get excited as we are. Thank you very much. Questions? Yes. Hey, how are you? Questions? Yes. Hey, how are you?
Yeah, no trouble. Hi. I'm just wondering if you can tell us a little bit about the production process changes from premium to freemium in terms of team size and also just changes to the composition, maybe?
In terms of team size, I wouldn't say that, in composition, by the way, I wouldn't say it's drastically different from the typical smartphone team. It varies depending on the familiarity with the genre. It depends on whether they've made this game before and so on. I would say that anything between 5, 6, 7 people and double that number, depending on the developer and experience, is probably going to bracket the reality. The process is very different. Not the early stage of the process. Fundamentally, you want to do your pre-production, you want to do your high concept, you want to start early. But here, where things change dramatically, when you start implementing, you need to build a lot of time to iterate. And you want to build the core components of the game in the beginning. If you don't have the social components and your economy built by the moment you get to vertical slice, you will fundamentally struggle towards the end to be able to build that. So what you need to do is you need to understand what your major blocks are going to be and think about those from the very beginning and build in a modular way and then go out from there. What else?
So in any kind of large company pivot like that, there are team members who make the transition gracefully and those who struggle. In terms of really making that fundamental shift from linear development through release and moving on to that cyclical iterative process, what were the skills or attitudes that sort of were good signals for employees' ability to transition, and what were the skill sets or attitudes that really struggled?
I think it comes down to one, to be totally honest, and it comes down to flexibility. Are you willing to throw away where you've learned for 5, 6, 10 years? I mean, in the gaming industry, I'm blessed to say that I work with some of the smartest people I know. There's a lot of smart people, so intelligence and talent is never the issue. Chances are, if you've been in the industry for 5 years, you're competent, and chances are you're smart, at least average smart for a developer in the gaming industry, which I think puts you probably in the top 10 percentile of the American population. I think the problem really is, and that's a problem I've seen, I've been on projects where people were clinging to the project. We say, it's not done, let me finish it. And we were saying, it's done. We have what we need to be able to go to market. The experience that we have is intact in terms of the vision that we had. It's a good experience. It's something that people will enjoy and appreciate. All that you want to add is just based on a model that doesn't pertain and doesn't belong to the reality of freemium anymore. And so I would say that that's the reason why I'm saying it's psychological, it's cultural, it's a mindset, it's the ability to understand and accept a very, very different way to think. Yes?
Yeah. How much of the game, of the freemium game, is running on the server, and if there's a lot of it that's running on the server, so you have to keep pinging the server and getting the game back. So how much of your team do you need to change to make sure you have a strong server-side team as opposed to just a client-side team?
You need to have a very strong server-side engineering team, regardless how much of your game runs on the server. I mean, you can have games that only work when they have a connection, and games that can work all the time. And you can be very successful. You can have that model work for you extremely well. So the challenge is not going to be how you architect your game, as much as how agile, flexible, and error-prone or error-free, I should say, your architecture is going to be. If you hit the server every single time and you expect that the latency is going to be very small, and you live in San Francisco or New York City, and your network is going to switch from edge to 3G all the time like it does, good luck. So you need to be extremely nimble when it comes down to the way you rely on the network. So you need to have a very talented and very strong network And frankly, people have made games for network games before. How big? It depends on your game. It depends if it's an MMO, if it is an RPG game that there is a lot of server-side content. So there is no single rule. But it's a very, very important part of just architecting the game. Yes?
Yes, so I wanted to ask you a little bit more about the cyclical nature of the development, the iterative nature of the development, and specifically how that aligns to the business side of the game, right? Like the marketing, the distribution. How are you aligning both sides? Can you just talk about that a little bit and what sort of strategies you guys
They need to be
take?
aligned 100%. So what I mean by that is obviously before you launch, your opportunities are limited. I mean, I'm not aware of a technology at the moment that without deploying the game somewhere allows you to distribute the game on large masses that mimic exactly the dynamics of the real world that the game is going to be in. I hope there will be one very soon because it will be an amazing tool. So if there is any tool developer in the audience that wants to do that, I'd like to talk to them because it definitely there is a business model there. I would say that post-launch, you absolutely need to be in lockstep 100%. Obviously, the limitation is going to be, at least on iOS, the approval, right? So you go through Apple. It takes about 2 weeks, 10 working days to get approval from Apple. So you don't have the same ability to access data as you do. Not access data. You can access data any moment, but to correct as much as you can, for example, on Facebook or Android if you want, where there is no approval. But in terms of polling the data, understanding what consumers are doing, we look at analytics every day. In my opinion, we don't look at analytics enough, in fact. I think we still trust our game maker instinct a little too much. At the end of the day, I don't want to sound like somebody who discounts the importance of your instincts, but you also need to understand that you're not the typical consumer of some of these games. So you need to maintain a very good level of communication with your community. And I use the word community as opposed to audience because it does change the way you look at them in a very different way.
So we have time for one last question, and then we need to clear out so that Mark can get ready for an event.
Hi.
Hey there.
You showed that chart of different ways that modern games make their money, some from advertising, some from virtual goods, et cetera. I'm pretty familiar with Gun Brothers, for example.
Right.
You use all those mechanisms. Sometimes my kids accidentally hit the ads. I mean, there's a lot. It's a busy screen. So my question is, how do you do it at Glu in terms of the design process? Do you try all the monetization methods, watch the data, tune it, and whatever makes the most money is the way you go?
Well, at this point, we know where the knobs are, right? At any given point in time, they will change. We have some of the best people in the industry, in my opinion, in terms of understanding how the dynamics of some of these channels work. And we try to take advantage of every single one of them. Obviously, you need to be able to understand what's working and what's not in terms of being able to turn that knob in a way that is positive. So we play with that all the time. We try to move a lot of those knobs in terms of control from the client to the server so that we can make a lot of changes on the fly and see what works best. Frankly, we still don't have all of those tools built on the server side, but definitely that's where the emphasis is going to go. But you need to be able to experiment. You need to have an hypothesis. You need to be able to prove whether that hypothesis is correct or not, and course correct and try to see what happens. The good news is that when you start having the DAO, the daily average users that Gambros has, at that point you have a very large audience. You'll be able to see some pretty interesting numbers and representative numbers very quickly.
So thank you, Giancarlo.
My
Awesome
pleasure. Thank you
presentation.
so much for the opportunity.